Okay, so to start this video off, I first want to thank Billy once again because not only did he send me that super rare, super sick REVO Ds8 to play with, he also sent another reel that is going to be my first ever KDM reel to review. And that's right, I said KDM with a K, not JDM with a J. Now, you're probably wondering what does KDM stand for? Well, let me explain. Now by now, most of you guys probably know what JDM reels are, and JDM stands for Japanese Domestic Market. And since I live here in America, we have our own market, the USDM or United States Domestic Market. And then now, since fishing is exploding in China, we have the latest market, the CDM or Chinese Domestic Market. And we have companies like DAIWA even making special reels just for that market. So what is KDM? KDM is the Korean domestic market, and it's a very unknown market. Very few people even know of it, and only the true tackle nerds really know and are aware of the Korean domestic market, because it is very, very mysterious and very, very secretive. And let me show you the reel that Billy sent me. It is called the Mike Morgan. Actually, of course, by the title and the thumbnail, you know this reel is called the Doyo Liger 30. And let me let you guys take a good look at this gorgeous reel here. Now, Billy explained to me, why this reel came in a Mike Morgan box, but I'm not sure what kind of shady back alley transactions he did to be able to get his hands on this reel. But he did nonetheless, and here it is in my hands. And I'm pretty stunned by this thing. As you can see, it looks very much like a current Shimano. The design language is very similar, especially with this, I guess, this metallic dark gray paint that looks super stunning. Hopefully that's coming through in the camera. But yeah, look at all the details. Let you guys take a good look at it. Alright, I'm going to do my usual inspection, and I will get back to you with my findings. Okay, so I'm done with my inspection, and for those of you who are wondering what in the hell is a Doyo Liger, Doyo is the brand name, and Liger 30 is the model. And for those of you who have never heard of Doyo, or think you've never heard of Doyo, you're going to learn today. Now, over in Korea, we have two huge tackle companies, Banax and Doyo. And there are a couple of other ones like DAIWA and Silstar, but I'm not sure of the status of those companies today. But when it comes to the amount of reels out on the market and people actually fishing them, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Doyo is probably the biggest company in the world, and probably being used by more fishermen than any other brand, even Shimano and DAIWA. And in fact, a lot of you guys are probably fishing Doyo reels without even knowing it, because Doyo makes reels for some of the biggest tackle companies in the world. They make all the Abu Garcia Revos, and I believe they make all their Max series reels as well. They make reels for Bass Pro Shops, which is a very popular brand here in America. They make reels for Penn, and I believe they used to make reels for Pflueger. I'm not sure about that anymore. And of course, they make all the low profile LEWS reels. And in fact, this Liger 30 is actually on sale in America right now as the LEWS Custom Light. So big shout out to Billy. I was actually going to buy a custom light on Black Friday, and get a discount on it, but since he was going to send me the Liger, I am going to be able to test out the custom light inadvertently by testing out this Liger. Now, the Liger's been out for almost 2 years now, and I knew about the reel right after it came out, and I actually was trying to get one, and this is where we're going to talk about the Korean domestic market. Now, because I guess Banex and Doyo make reels for so many companies, they probably have an agreement to where they're not going to sell any kind of Doyo branded or Banex branded reels outside of Korea. So these reels are extremely hard to get. I've looked everywhere. I went on eBay, tried to go on Amazon Korea or eBay Korea, trying to import some of these reels, and I could not find any at all. That's just how strict they are about keeping these reels for sale in Korea only. And like I said, I am not sure how Billy got this reel, but here it is. Now, once again, this reel is striking looking. It looks like pretty much any modern day Shimano from a distance. It's very well made, very smooth, and it's pretty small. I'm not going to say it's the smallest reel in the world, but it is pretty tiny. And we're going to start off by doing some size comparisons. Okay, so the first size comparison we're going to do is against the Shimano CURADO 70. And you can see they are pretty similar in length, with the Liger being noticeably wider. And let's see, they are pretty close. It looks like the Liger actually might be even lower than the CURADO 70, and that's saying something. And I actually mounted this reel on a rod, and it's super comfortable, especially if you like to put your finger around the front of the reel like this. Now, I palm like this, but if you palm like this, this reel is super comfortable because of this curve on the side plate. It kind of just naturally fits in the curve of your palm. Very comfortable reel to palm. So the next comparison is going to be against the REVO UltraCast BF8, and you can see they are very similar in size, very similar in shape. Now, since this is a REVO, of course this is a Doyo made reel, you can definitely see the shape resemblance there. They are very square shaped, and it looks like the Liger actually is lower profile. So the last comparison we're going to do is going to be against the SLX XT. And they are very similar. It looks like, just like the CURADO 70, the Liger is wider, but they're about the same length. So yeah, SLX is probably one of the smallest reels out on the market today. So this Liger 30 is very comparable. So now it's time to go over the specifications and features of this reel, and there are quite a lot. Now before we do that, I did go on Doyo Korea's website as well as LEWS website, and I did a side-by-side spec comparison between the Liger 30 and the custom light to see if there was any kind of differences, and for the most part they are the same reel, but I did find 3 things that were different in the custom light, which I'll point out to you guys as I go over them. Now, the big deal about this reel is that it's supposed to be the lightest ever, I guess, LEWS reel, and we'll get more into the weight later, but they achieve that by going with what they call a Tanzotech frame. Now, in Korea, they call it Fedron. And Tanzotech and Fedron have trademarks beside their name, so I guess They're called different things in different countries, but basically after doing research on Tanzotech, it looks like it is a special isotropic graphite. Now, I'm not sure how that differs to, the fancy carbon frames from DAIWA and SHIMANO, but yeah, it's got a special Tanzotech / Fedron graphite frame, and it feels very strong. I don't feel any kind of flex or anything, and so far I'm pretty impressed with how light it is as well. Now, it's got a total of 11 ball bearings, and this reel is very, very smooth. It's got that very rigid, glassy smoothness of the first and second generation DAIWA TATULAs that have the air rotation. And that's pretty much with all LEWS I've found. And if you go to, like, say a Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's, and you pick up a Abu Garcia and a LEWS side by side and turn the handle, the LEWS is always going to be smoother in my experience. And that's kind of funny because they are made by the same company. And I think it's that extra bearing that LEWS has over the Abu Garcia, which they more than likely place on the main shaft to give it that glassy, smooth retrieve that feels like DAIWA's air rotation. But yeah, most Abu Garcias max out at 10 bearings, while the LEWS will max out at 11. Now, the next spec that they are touting is that the Liger has a 30mm spool. As you can see there, it says 30mm spool. What does that say? Feel the difference. So it is a very, very small spool. I'm going to assume it's lightweight as well, but it's also pretty deep. But the line capacity on this is not much more than, I guess, an ALDEBARAN 50. But as you can see, it's got, this little channel drilled into both sides of the spool. Just like with the LEWS Custom Light, I guess you stick your line through there to tie your knot. Now with the Liger though, you could actually order it with a choice of 2 extra shallow spools. And in fact, this reel came with one of them. As you can see there, it's not the shallowest thing in the world, but they do offer a super shallow, super ported bait finesse spool, which is why I was trying to import this reel to begin with. So if anyone knows where I can import that spool, leave it in the comments, because if I can get a hold of that spool, I'll definitely pick me up a LEWS Custom Light to play around with. Now, the Liger has a 90mm carbon fiber handle, and it's pretty generic that you'll find on pretty much a lot of Korean made reels. Of course, it is swept, and this is the first difference between the Liger and the Custom Light, because the Custom Light comes with a 95mm handle. Now we have a clicking spool tension. Now the clicks are not precise like, the DAIWAs or the upper end Shimanos, but it clicks nonetheless. And of course, a lot of you guys probably recognize this. It's got the line indicator, where you can remind yourself what poundage of line you're using. And I used to think that was a gimmick, but I actually think it's pretty cool now, and I wish pretty much all reels would have this feature. So the centerpiece here, you can twist with your thumb, and you would basically point the arrow to whatever closest line poundage you're using, and you see F is for fluorocarbon, and M and B is for mono and braid. So once again, I thought it was a gimmick at first, but now I have so many reels spooled up with line that I can't tell, what the strength is. I think pretty much all reels need that. Now it's got the classic Doyo hook keeper right here. Pretty sure you guys are familiar with that. Anyone who has a LEWS or a Abu Garcia. And of course, it's got the classic Doyo lube port here, if you want to put some grease in your gears. And it's got a clicking aluminum drag star, and this drag star is very heavily ported, and that's one way you can recognize that you have a Doyo reel, because they use the same shape drag star on all their reels across all the manufacturers. Now the Liger 30 is rated up to 16.5 pounds of drag, and they say it has a carbon fiber drag. And here's the second difference between the Liger and the Custom Light. LEWS claims that the Custom Light has 20 pounds of drag, so it's more drag on the LEWS, and combined with, I guess, the longer handle, those are necessary changes that LEWS made for the American market. Now the Custom Light claims to have the P2 bearing supported pinion, so I'm assuming that's going to be on the Liger as well. It's got a titanium coated zirconia line guide, and unfortunately it's not tapered at all. It looks like the entrance is going to be the same as the exit as far as size goes. And being such a squat reel, they poked the line guide out, I guess, as far as they could on this Liger 30. Now it's got adjustable centrifugal brakes from the outside with a total of 28 total brake settings, so that's pretty standard for LEWS. But it is centrifugal, not magnetic. And then the last feature is that the Liger 30 has a clicking drag, which is something a lot of people are looking for these days for some reason. I can live without it, but a lot of people insist on a clicking drag these days. And apparently the Custom Light does not have a clicking drag. So that's difference number 3. So once again, the 3 differences between the Liger 30 and the Custom Light is the Custom Light has a longer handle, more stopping power on the drag at 20 pounds versus 16.5, and then the Custom Light does not have the drag clicker. So yeah, there we go with the features and specs. And yeah, take a look at this reel. As you can see, good old Mike got his name laser etched on this little trim piece here. And another thing that I noticed, I'm not sure why this is on there, but on the brake dial it says Titleist. I'm pretty sure that's a golf brand. Now it's interesting that they don't have a stamp here letting me know where this reel is made, or I should say a sticker. I'm assuming it's going to be made in Korea, or if it was made in China or something, they probably would have had a sticker saying made in China. But the thumb bar feels pretty good, not the most refined, feels pretty slop free so far. But yeah, now it's time to pull the scale out and get the weights and measurements, because I really want to see just how heavy or light this spool is. Okay, so as you can see, I got the scale out, and LEWS is claiming that the Custom Light is their lightest ever reel, coming in at 4.9 ounces, so under 5 ounces. And that's the big selling point for the Custom Light. Now let's see if the Doyo Liger can actually prove that to be right, because on Doyo's website they didn't mention anything about any kind of weight, at least that I could see with Google Translate. Alright, so we got it on ounces. 5 ounces on the dot. Let's weigh that again, putting in a different angle, and 4.99. So I guess depending on how you angle it on the scale, it is under 5 ounces sometimes. So because of the slight changes with the Custom Light with the drag and the handle, etc., it may actually be under 5 ounces. I won't know until I actually get my hands on one. But yeah, very, very lightweight. And let's get to the spool. Now, to get to the spool of the Liger, you have to pull this pin and then rotate, I guess up, yeah, rotate up the side plate. And yeah, here's the 30mm spool of the Doyo Liger. As you can see, they're using the Shimano style long spool shaft, which probably attributes to the differences between the retrieve smoothness between LEWS and Abu Garcia. But there are the brakes. Now, the way the brakes work, it looks like the same brakes that are on my BB1 Pro, is that there are 6 of these brake arms, and they fly out during the cast. As you can see, I'm trying to demonstrate, but they appear to fly out at, I guess, different levels. Some will pop out farther than others, and basically they rub up against this brass ring, and then you can adjust the brake pressure by turning the dial, and this brass ring will move up and down, giving you more or less brakes. So yeah, that's how that works. Now, I'm looking at this brake assembly and I see these little things here. I wonder if you can activate or deactivate these brakes. It doesn't look like you can turn them off and on like with Shimano and Abu Garcia's latest systems, but that's okay. I found that this style of brake works better in Doyo wheels anyway. So let's get to the spool weights here. Alright, now the first spool I'm going to weigh is going to be the standard spool. And it comes in, it looks like at 9.8 grams. Let's weigh that again. Well, 9.7 grams. One more time. 9.7. So we're going to go with 9.7. And as you can see, it's got a spool bearing. And let's weigh the shallower spool now. That's kind of funny. The shallower spool feels heavier because I guess there's more metal. And the scale says 10.4. So it is heavier. And this also has a spool bearing. But these are still some super lightweight spools, and they can achieve that by using an aluminum spool shaft, it looks like. Something that Shimano has yet to start adopting, and hopefully they will soon. Not sure if DAIWA is adopting it as well. But I'm going to pull these bearings out because I found my bearing tool, and I'm going to get some weights on these spools without the bearings. So as you can see, I got the bearings off both spools, and we're going to start off with the shallower finesse type spool. And I'm thinking it's somewhere in the mid 8s. It says 8.8. Let's get another weight with the spool still. 8.7 this time. One more time for the road. 8.8. So this spool is just under what I consider acceptable for bait finesse, and it is the same weight as the Shimano Scorpion BFS spool, but of course it's got a deeper spool for more line capacity. But also keep in mind that this spool is only 30 millimeters and it's using centrifugal brakes, which I will get more into in future videos. So let's get into the stock spool, and without the bearing this thing feels super light, like a feather. I'm thinking probably mid to low 8 grams on this based on the bearing. 8.2. We'll do one more weight with the spool still, hopefully. Yep, 8.2 grams. So that makes this spool the second lightest spool I've ever weighed for a non-bait finesse reel, with the lightest spool going to the Abu Garcia REVO MG Extreme 2 at 8 grams on the dot. And that makes this spool even lighter than the DAIWA STEEZ SB, which had a 9 gram spool without its bearing. So this spool is definitely going to be very, very finesse capable and finesse oriented. And since I have it out, it gives us a good chance just to see how small it is compared to, I guess, a standard spool, which I pulled out the one for the CURADO K, which is 34 millimeters, which is about average for today's bass reels. As you can see, it's super, super small versus the CURADO K spool. So yeah, with this spool being so small and so light, I'm definitely eager to get this out on the water and cast around with it. So to wrap this video up, I'm going to talk about exactly what reels is LEWS trying to compete with the Custom Light SLP. And that brings us to the price of this reel. Now the Custom Light here in America cost $280, so it's not cheap. And because it costs $280 and because of what the frame material is made of, you would think that LEWS is targeting this reel right here, the SHIMANO CHRONARCH MGL, which also costs $280 and has some kind of a fancy graphite carbon composite frame. And you can see just how much they look alike when I'm holding them side by side. But actually, I don't think the Custom Light is trying to compete with the CHRONARCH, and here's why. First of all, you can see the CHRONARCH is much bigger. It is noticeably heavier, and it's got a much bigger, deeper spool. So this is more of a general purpose bass reel, while the Doyo Liger or Custom Light seems to be more of a finesse reel. And that brings us to the second reel, and that is going to be another reel that has a very small, lightweight 30 millimeter spool, and that is DAIWA's STEEZ CT. Now, I don't think that this reel is trying to compete with the STEEZ CT either, despite having the same size spool. And that's because the STEEZ CT, for some reason, costs a ridiculous $700, and really only true DAIWA enthusiasts would be looking to buy that reel, and they certainly wouldn't be looking at a LEWS instead. Now actually, I think the reel that LEWS is trying to finesse some sales away from is going to be this reel right here, the Shimano ALDEBARAN. Now as you can see, they are somewhat similar in size. It looks like the ALDEBARAN is actually bigger. That's a shocker. And it looks like the ALDEBARAN is actually higher as well. It's not as low profile, but they weigh about the same. I believe the ALDEBARAN weighs 4.8 ounces while the Custom Light is supposed to weigh 4.9. They both have small, very lightweight spools meant for finesse oriented applications. And yeah, this is the reel that I think that LEWS is gunning for. And this is a formula that LEWS, as well as other companies, have been doing for a long time to compete against Shimano and to some extent DAIWA, is that they'll come out with a reel that has similar or better specs than the competing Shimano reel, but sell it to you at a much cheaper price. And I say that because the ALDEBARAN costs $420, while once again the Custom Light is $280, so $140 price savings there, and that's a lot of money. And also the LEWS does hold more line than the ALDEBARAN. So that's going to be a lot more attractive to the American market because we tend to use heavier lines and want reels with a lot of line capacity, even though we may not need them. So yeah, I think this is the reel that I'm going to be putting the Liger 30/custom light against. We'll do some side-by-side casting and fishing comparisons, maybe take them out on the field and do some cast measurements, see which reel has the better brake system. And if I'm impressed with the Liger 30, I may go ahead and pick me up a LEWS custom light. Alright guys, thanks a lot.